Hello, good morning. Welcome to Community Relations Commission. For the past 2 decades, Columbus have received thousands of refugees from around the world, and tens of thousands and more came through secondary immigration from other cities and other states. Today, we're very proud to present our last Lunch and Learn series on refugees and series role as a champion for welcoming city. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our moderator for this panel discussion, the Executive Director of the City of Columbus Community Relations Commission, Mr. Napoleon Pell.
Thank you so much, Abdi. And Abdi works in our office with the New Americans Initiative, which is working with the refugee and immigrant populations here in the city of Columbus. That initiative was initiated back in 2004 as part of Mayor Michael B. Coleman's initiatives. Also, and let me just also, I think Guadalupe Velasquez is here, and she is the coordinator of the New Americans Initiative, and she is actually in the back of the room there. So she coordinates that and has been doing that since 2005, I believe it is. So this is, a topic that is a very serious topic, but also we feel as though we must do our part to do the outreach and engagement, but also talk about some of the truths in regards to the refugee and immigrant populations here in the city of Columbus, and we believe nationwide and internationally. So I'd like to start this off, though, with a quote, and that is actually from President Obama's speech the other night. And it's in regards to terrorism. If we are to succeed in defeating terrorism, we must enlist Muslim communities as our strongest allies in rooting out misguided ideas that lead to radicalization. It is the responsibility of all Americans of every faith to reject discrimination. It is our responsibility to reject religious tests on who we admit into this country. It is our responsibility to reject language that encourages suspicion or hate, because that kind of divisiveness, that betrayal of our values, plays into the hands of groups like ISIL. We have to remember that. I am confident America will succeed in the mission because we are on the right side of history. Even as we debate our differences, let's make sure we never forget what makes us exceptional. We were founded upon a belief in human dignity, the idea that no matter who you are, or where you are from, or what you look like, or what religion you practice, you are equal in the eyes of God and equal in the eyes of law. Let's not forget that freedom is more powerful than fear, that we have always met challenges, whether war or depression, natural disasters or terrorist attacks, by coming together around our common ideals. As long as we stay true to who we are, then I have no doubt that America will prevail. President Barack Obama. Our commission, the Columbus Community Relations Commission, follows those ideals. We enforce the Civil Rights Code for the City of Columbus and housing, employment, and public accommodations. We will fight discrimination in every corner, but we will also try to make sure we educate everyone here in the City of Columbus and beyond to be accepting, to be welcoming to all of those who grace our city and our presence. So we come together and we brought this panel discussion, and we hope that this is informational and educational to you. I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll have some discussion from questioning, but then we'll also give you the opportunity to also ask questions of the panelists. That will probably be about an hour into the program. So let me first start, and I'll start with the right, and then we go down the list, and or down the line here of our distinguished panelists. If you could introduce yourself and the agency that you are from, and we'll go from there. First, if not.
Everybody, I am Nadia Kasvin, co-founder and director of Us Together. Us Together is a statewide refugee resettlement organization providing services in Columbus, Cleveland, and Toledo.
Mahdi Warsame. I'm the chairman of the board of directors of Masjid As-Salama. This is a Somali majority mosque in Columbus. In my day job, I work for the Somali outreach program at the Buckeye Ranch. This is a mental health and behavioral health organization in Columbus and many places. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sumaya Hamadmad. I'm not really representing any organization. I'm representing the Syrian humans, the humans of Syria.
Hello, everybody. My name is Juma Acharya. I'm a resettlement case manager at Community Refugee and Immigration Service as a part of my employment, and I'm also a board of director at Bhutanese Nepali community of organization at Columbus.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Reither. I'm the field office director for the local U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security.
Well, again, thank you so much, panelists, for being here. I'm looking forward to an energized conversation with all of you. So I think, what we try to do and help the people understand who is coming into the community and who they're about. You better understand that by hearing their story, talking to someone and hearing what their story is and how they got here. And so I would, if Juma, if you could talk about your story and coming to America, and what you went through to get here.
Thank you, Director, for the opportunity. Well, my name is Juma once again. I am a refugee from Bhutan. I was born and brought up in Bhutan, and I was evicted from the country in 1992 and ended up living in refugee camp for 20 years of my life. I was 13 years old when I came to refugee camp in Nepal. And when I talk about camp, many of us, we know what refugee camp would look like, because these days we have been hearing about refugees and the life of refugees around the globe. Our camps were more like very much like captivated. It is an enclosed area where refugees were allowed to live and were not allowed to go outside the camp. So I spent my 20 years of my life in that, I should say, a captivated area. And as I came to the camp, it was the beginning of the refugee. Entering to Nepal was kind of very chaos. There were like hundreds and hundreds of refugees coming. I still remember the day when I came to Nepal as a refugee, there were about 64 trucks that were carrying refugees from Bhutan, evicted people from Bhutan. And I was one among those group of trucks. After living in camp for a year, I started volunteering as a teacher in the camp when I was 14 years old. It will sound like a story, but it's a real thing. And then I was a teacher for those 20 years of my life. I never had a chance to go back to a formal school after that, but I managed to get my bachelor and master's degree by hook or crook. And after 15 years, after I got my master's degree, then I took a job outside refugee camp just to establish myself, but it was a very, very difficult life because I was disguised as a Nepali, because my identity as a refugee outside the camp was kind of horrible. People would not take you as a human being if you are a refugee in the camp. So just to get safe from that, I always said that I'm a Nepali citizen. And I was working as a teacher in a private school, but I was kicked out of the school when they identified me as a refugee, which really brought tears to my eyes, saying that I am no more a human being now. I am in Nepal. Everybody speaks my own language. We have no difference at all, but still I'm taking it as a unique human being. That really hurt me so much that day. Then after that, I started thinking, what is the next option in my life? What should I do? Should I commit suicide and finish up my life just to get away from refugee tag? Or is there any other option? I prayed to God, well, let me get a way out. I'm so much done with refugee life now. Am I going to be a refugee for throughout my life? No, no way. So I was in that panic mood. All refugees in the camps were almost in the same panic mood. Fortunately, this third country resettlement process came. Just before that, there were lots of bilateral talks between the government of Bhutan and Nepal to take these refugees back home. Bhutan, who is so-called my country, I always call it a so-called, because if I was from Bhutan, I would have never been evicted from there. they would never accept these people. They always say, well, these are non-nationals, these are terrorists. They left the country of their own. They wanted to have a better pasture land, so they left the country. So when this third country resettlement process came to the public announcement in 2007, I was one of the excited person in the camp who would say, well, now there is a way. God has opened a door for me. I applied for the process in 2008. Unfortunately, there are lots of demographic changes in the family. My father passed away. I got married after a year, so that brought my process down. But I was processed, and I got resettled to Rhode Island, Providence City of Rhode Island in 2011. That was February 3rd of 2011. When I came first time to the United States, it was a snowy day. I have never ever seen snow in my life. And that was the heaviest snowfall of the year. I was kind of lost in between those snow mountains. But still, I am from Nepal. I am from Bhutan, from the Himalayan country. So I never gave up my way. I was waiting for the day to see the grassland there. And after going to the ESL classes, job training classes for 2-3 months, I got a job as a hotel housekeeper. I used to teach microbiology for undergraduate students back in Nepal for 6 years. But I took a chance of going to the hotel and working as a houseman. I worked for 5 years. 5 months thereafter, I was offered a job at it's Providence City School. And I worked as a teacher assistant for a year. Since more of the family members came to Ohio, I then planned to move to Ohio, Columbus. After a month of my arrival to Ohio, I was offered a job of Refugee Resettlement Case Manager at CRIS, Community Refugee and Immigration Service. And I am there helping refugees, welcoming them. And that is the pride that I have. I help my refugee fellow mate coming to this country. And I'm so happy to be in this great land. And I will try my best to give all that I have to help refugees resettling here. Thank you.
Well, and we were happy to have you. That's amazing, 20 years in a refugee camp. And it felt as though you were captivated. And so I just can't even imagine what that must feel like and be like. So thank you for that. So in coming here, you talked about a refugee agency or an agency to help resettling. And so that really takes me to Ms. Nadia here in regards to resettlement. And so if you could talk a little bit about, as in Juma's journey, he now comes into Rhode Island. So, and as in with here in Columbus, and they come to Columbus, and they find themselves at your door. Tell us a little bit about that process.
United States has a refugee resettlement program, which resettles about 85,000 refugees a year around the country. And majority of refugees come to United States either through family reunification or through referrals from United Nations High Commission on Refugees. This is a long process. It takes anywhere from 18 to 24 months. Refugees are referred by United Nations. United Nations has a series of screening for refugees referred to United States Refugee Program. Then a series of biographic checks are done by refugee processing centers, Department of Homeland Security, law enforcement, and intelligence communities. And then additional layer of security checks, a series of biometric checks are done by FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and US Department of Defense. All refugee applications to US refugee program are screened, reviewed, and applicants are interviewed by United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. And only then successful applicants go through all the health screenings and cultural orientation prior to departure from where they are and coming to the United States. So when the refugee cases are approved, they are referred to refugee resettlement organizations. And here in Columbus, we have 3 refugee resettlement organizations. I represent Us Together. We also have here in the room representatives of Community Refugee and Immigrant Services and also World Relief. 3 refugee resettlement organizations resettle more than 1,500 refugees in Central Ohio. And refugees come from different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, different religious backgrounds. We treat everybody the same, and we offer the same services to everybody. We make sure that basic needs are met. We make sure that we meet them at the airport, we welcome them, we arrange for housing, we arrange for furniture, for household items, for food in the refrigerator. We link them to all the services available in the community, provide orientation, employment services, link them to health care and various other opportunities and programs that we offer both within our agencies as well as outside, with mainstream providers. Refugees don't just, appear at our doorstep. This is a very controlled process. It's very different from what you see on your TV screens happening in Europe. We know about refugees and refugee families months before they come. We prepare for their arrival. We review their bios that are sent to us. We make sure that we have capacity to serve them in the city of Columbus, in our communities. We have quarterly consultations with the major stakeholders in the community to update about refugee resettlement, to make sure that refugees are met, to discuss the gaps in service delivery.
Great. So so it's not a just coming here and automatically getting in. It's not a quick process.
It's not a quick process. I myself came to this country as a refugee 22 years ago. I came as a refugee from Ukraine. And even at that time, the whole process from the moment that my family applied to the moment that I arrived to the United States took 3 years. And the screening procedures only increased since that time.
So let me then turn to Ms. Reither, Field Office Director of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Can you explain a little bit about the process from your vantage point? And I guess also, there's been numbers thrown out there, how many are we expecting, and so on and so on. So could you show us or talk to us about some facts on that and the process as you see it?
Sure. So each year in the federal government, our fiscal year starts October 1st. Around October 1st, the President of the United States submits a report to Congress. And in that report, the report is required under law. The President outlines the projected totals of refugees the President would like to admit for that year. The President isn't seeking congressional approval, it's just a report he submits to Congress to notify how many refugees. The previous years, the President has allotted 70,000 refugees to enter the country. In fiscal year 2016, the President has allotted 85,000 refugees to enter the country, 10,000 of those to be Syrians. If you're really interested in that report, you can go on the Department of State's website and look for the presidential FY16 Refugee Report. It's 84 pages. It will tell you the percentages of populations that came in last year, and then 2014, 2015, and the proposed for 2016. It will also break it down by country, what turmoil is going in that country, and why we need to resettle the refugees here versus staying in the current country they're in. So it's a very detailed report. You can get all the numbers there. And again, this year we're projected to take in 85,000. The process from the Department of Homeland Security is that it's really a partnership between Homeland Security and the Department of State who run the program. Of the millions of refugees that register with the United Nations only 1% get referred to any third country, not just the United States, but any third country for a resettlement. Just 1% of those millions get referred. We take the referrals from the United Nations and they go to a resettlement support center. The resettlement support center is contracted out by the Department of State, and it can be run by a number of NGOs, Catholic charities, different organizations that have a contract with the Department of State. The resettlement support center starts several of the 6 total background checks that the refugees must undergo. Each refugee, before even being approved or interviewed, undergoes 6 different background checks. 3 are biometric, which means fingerprint-based. 3 are based on their name, date of birth, and country of region and ethnicity. So once the resettlement support does initial intake and review of the candidate, they are then referred to my department, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which each year deploys over 100 officers into foreign countries to conduct refugee interviews. During those interviews, we will interview the person from when they were born to current day. And we will actually compare that to the data they gave to the Resettlement Support Center to make sure it has stayed consistent and question them on if anything has changed, why that has changed. These interviews are very detailed. Officers are trained extensively on the country they are going to. For example, if they're going to Kenya to interview Somalis, USCIS officers are trained on country conditions, language spoken, tribes, questions to ask them. They're thoroughly vetted on their story. And we will even do background research. Does their story match what we know happened in the news? During our check, we again initiate some of those background checks. Once those are all passed, they are approved or denied. If they're denied, we retain their information so that they can't just recycle back through the system. If they're approved, they have a full medical to see if there's any medical conditions that would prevent them from coming to the United States. After that, they go through a cultural orientation, 1 to 5 days of training of what to expect in the United States once you get here. And then they help with funding for them to travel, which they must pay back within 6 months after arriving. So they're given a loan for their plane ticket that they must pay back. And then they get on a plane and come here. And then one more time, Customs and Border Patrol agents will interview them, do a couple checks on them while they're at the airport, and then they're finally admitted into the country as a refugee. Once they're here as a refugee, they're in a refugee status. They can work and travel on that. After they've been in a refugee status for 1 year in the United States, they can then apply for what is commonly known as the green card, or in technical terms, adjustment of status. So after a year being here, they can then apply for that green card. Once they get their green card, after 5 years of having the green card, they can then apply for U.S. citizenship, which starts a whole bunch of other background checks. So that's kind of from start to end.
Thank you so much. And I guess a question that we need to get the facts on in regards to how long are refugees provided funding or service, or it's out there in communities that, oh, we're paying for them or giving them subsidies for several years. I've heard up to 8 years. So what is what's the factual information on that?
Sure. Once they arrive here, programs are funded by the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement, and that's administered by the states. And currently there's a contract with several different agencies to provide that support: Church World Services, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. And they're given funding, and generally it's 12 months worth of support: job training, housing.
Is it physical money, though? Are they given money to survive? Well, I know that you talked about they have to pay the plane ticket back, but when they arrive, and this might be a question for anyone here, I know those who have gone through it, what is the monies that they receive to get going? Because it sounds like they have to pay back the plane ticket, and then also if they get here, how do you live from then on, and how long financially are they supported?
So if I might add, to that is that the initial funding for refugee services, for refugee resettlement, is provided by U.S. State Department. And it's a one-time support, which is anywhere from $950 to $1,125 per person, one time only. And also provision of services, basic resettlement services during the first 30 to 90 days after arrival. And then after 30 days of arrival, usually we have kick in the support from Office of Refugee Resettlement, which provides funding for employment services, for English classes, and so on, access to health and other support services to guide refugees and assist them during the first, several months or up to 1 year, sometimes up to 2 years. Different programs have different, time frames. And upon arrival, refugees have the same rights as U.S. citizens. The citizenship, basically for all the purposes, the citizenship requirement is waived for refugees. So if refugees can meet the same eligibility requirements of income and other requirements required by, for example, Franklin County Department of Job and Family Services in regards to issuing benefits like cash assistance or food stamps or and Medicaid, then they would have exactly the same rights as U.S. citizens. And in addition to that, refugees who don't have children under 18 and who would not qualify for participation in TANF program would have only 8 months of refugee cash assistance provided by Office of Refugee Resettlement.
Excellent. Okay, so let me switch gears here a little bit because, and I think I'd like to start with Mr. Warsame, and I guess in regards to Muslims and the violent extremism, how do Muslims though feel about the violent extremism that's perpetuated in the name of faith, and how about the effects overwhelming majority of Muslims around the world, and how does that affect Muslims around the world?
We believe that, like the president said in his address to the nation, that the largest and the biggest victims of terrorism are the Muslims, are not the Western nations, it's the Muslims. The blood of the Muslim people in Syria, in Iraq, in Somalia, in Yemen, is very cheap. These groups, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, and with many other names, kill more Muslims per day than they kill, last 20 years in the West or anywhere in the West. There are some estimates that as many as 20,000 plus Iraqis, only Iraqis, died as a result of suicide bombing. More than 8,000 Syrians died as a result of suicide bombing and killings by al-Nusra or ISIS. So the Muslims are the victims, number one. Number two, we believe that the ideology that they employ, including mass murder, indiscriminate killing, overthrowing the Muslim governments by violent means, assassinating innocent people, even killing people inside the mosques and outside the mosques, not even saving the kids and the women and the weak and the people who are inside the place of worship, is absolutely contrary to the correct and authentic and orthodox teachings of Islam. You can go back to the history for yourself and see during the long period of Islamic empire and the warfare they had against their enemies and how they conducted themselves. It's not permissible in Islam, for example, for someone to kill himself for any reason. There's a clear, in the Quran, Allah says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, and do not kill yourself. Clear cut. وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ, and do not put your hands into destruction. The Prophet Muhammad said, whoever kills himself with any means will be punished with that same mean in hereafter. If you cut yourself with a knife, you will be cutting yourself in a knife in hereafter. We believe that the only warfare that the Muslims knew until recently is a conventional warfare where the rules of war were respected, the rights of the POW were respected, and the civilians and the women and children and the weak and the unarmed people were never killed by any Islamic government in the history of the mankind. So I'm talking about those who apply Islam into their daily lives, like the Ottoman Empire and those who were before them. So we believe that this ideology that is practiced by Al-Shabaab or Al-Nusra or ISIS or ISIL is actually has a name in the Islamic terminology and Islamic theology. And that name is they are Al-Khawarij. And the tenets of the beliefs of the Al-Khawarij are three. Number one, they believe what we call a takfir, which means they accuse the other Muslims to be apostates and then they kill them. To justify killing the other Muslims, they say they are apostates and they kill them. And that's exactly what they are doing. Second, they never believe the legitimacy of any government other than the government that they run, their government. So if the head of the government is not one of them, that government is not legitimate. And that's what they did to the companions of the Prophet and any government after them. They kill the ruler, they create unlawfulness. And third, the Khawarij ideology believes that the individual Muslim or person can raise arms can declare peace of war, like individual. The Orthodox Islam is only the head of the state or the ruler or the leader of the Muslims can declare war and fight, not the individual Muslims. Khawarij believe that wherever you are, any individual can kill anybody and call it, it's a jihad, and believe that they will go to heaven by doing that. So that's the position of the Muslims. However, I don't believe it's enough for us to say, just to condemn when there's a suicide bombing or the mass shooting committed by a Muslim. We believe that we have to be proactive and we have to speak against this ideology within our communities, within our mosques. And the teachers of the mosques and the imams have a responsibility to talk to their congregation about this and educate the people about this deadly ideology. And the teachers have to talk to the children and the youth about this. And the parents have to talk to their children about this. And we have to bring this discussion to the open air and make sure that we don't fall victims to this. The safety, the public safety of the Muslim community is on the line. The peaceful coexistence of the communities in the United States is on the line. So the Muslims have to take this responsibility very seriously. But at the same time, we know this is not our religion, that's not who we are, and that's not our values. Thank you.
Thank you, Mom. A peaceful coexistence. And I think those are very true and honest words, and that's what we are attempting to do here at the CRC, and also bringing this panel together to have this discussion with all of you. A person who we haven't heard from is also on our panel, is from Syria, and I wanted to end this piece of our conversation on her story. So if Sumaya Hamad, if you could tell your story.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for coming here and listening to. It's actually the Syrian people's story. It's not my own story, but I am part of this story. So connecting those two stories, actually the refugee story with the extremism, we really have to go back to the root problem. Why are those people leaving their country? If we want to like deal with the refugee problem, we have to tackle the root problem first. What's driving those refugees to leave their countries? And what's driving this extremism? And how are people like ISIS or Daesh, I like to call them Daesh because they're not Islamic, they're not state. So Daesh is a word that they really hate, the ISIL group, so I'm gonna use it from here on. So Daesh actually, how did Daesh come? What drive Daesh ideology? So this is why I have to go back to the Syrian story, the Syrian revolution story. The revolution in Syria started in March 2011. It started as a continuation of the Arab Spring, the Egyptian revolution, the Tunisian revolution. People like came out in the streets with protests, peaceful protests. They were carrying flowers and they were carrying banners just asking for the fall down, not the fall down. At the beginning, they were looking for change. They were looking for their civil rights. The Syrian regime was one of the most totalitarian, whatever that word is, dictatorships in the world. Okay, he's a dictator. He has killed, maybe I'll make this more personal. I am a Syrian, but I've never lived in Syria. The Syrian regime actually demolished my own town of Hama in 1982. That's 30 years ago. That's by the Assad, the father. So this is why you see so many Syrians actually living outside of Syria because they had to flee 30 years ago from Syria. So when the revolution started, everyone was optimistic that maybe we can bring change. Maybe finally this regime would bring some sort of change. We're not too optimistic, we're not too ambitious, but some change that we can, look forward to. But that was not the case. For 6 months, the Syrian revolution was as peaceful as can be, and the only response for the regime was brutal crackdown on the protesters. 5,000 people were killed during that period. 5,000 when they were like only going out protesting for some change, some freedom of expression. So that was his response. Then, of course, he was using his army to kill those protesters. So army defection started, army members, they said, we cannot go on and keep killing those people. They're peaceful. And the whole story of the regime was those are not peaceful. They're like Al-Qaeda. They're like terrorists. They're Salafi, jihadi. And that was not true. So for 6 months, and then defection started, and that's where the defected army members started, defending those protesters. They don't want to kill them anymore. So that's how the civil war started. And then the formation of the Free Syrian Army. So Daesh actually, or ISIS, did not exist in Syria until the end of 2012. For 2 years, the Syrian people were left alone, being killed, facing the most brutal regime on earth. They're being tortured for 2 years. More than 100,000 people were killed. And I brought some pictures actually to show you what those people are fleeing from. This is a picture of a baby. Assad regime is using barrel bombs. I don't know if you have ever heard of this, but they're just dropping bombs on his own people. For 2 years, nothing was done to help those people. And of course, this creates the best environment for what? For people like ISIS, for extremists, and for radicals who are, coming to those people nobody is doing anything for you. Let's start this crazy war and let's do something. People were helpless. They were hopeless. So that's what actually feeds the ISIS. That's how ISIS is actually attracting those foreign fighters from all over. Using those pictures, this is what those people are suffering on a daily basis. As we are speaking, kids are being killed by Assad and his allies, Iran and Hezbollah, and all those people are against the Syrian people, and they were left alone, nobody to help them. So my point is, if you want to defeat ISIS, you have to solve the root problem that led to ISIS, actually. You can't just target ISIS without targeting Assad. You can't go and bombard ISIS territories without actually targeting Assad. Otherwise, people will see you as, what are you doing? Assad is the real problem. Both Assad and ISIS are fighting the civilians now. They're fighting the people. But people are seeing the American-led coalition only fighting ISIS and not doing anything to help the civilians, to help the Syrian people. So that's actually, we have to really think about the root problems and how these things happen in order to find a real solution for that. Again, those are just few pictures, and they're happening as we speak. So as a great nation on earth, I'm very proud to say that only a few months ago, I've become an American citizen. And this was one of the proudest moments for my life. And although I did not come to this country as a refugee, I came as a migrant, as actually a grad student, and I finished my degree here and I became a citizen. So this is actually what makes this country great. It's to stand up for human rights. It's this civil call for justice and standing up for human rights all over the world. This is why we need to be responsible for those. I mean, we can't just turn our backs and say we do not care, we cannot listen to you. We have to be proactive and do something to help those people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and let me just follow up with a question to you, because this we've had questions on also in regards to the Syrian refugees. How many have you heard of that have resettled either here in Central Ohio or in Ohio? Do you have any numbers on that?
Zero.
Zero here?
Zero. In Columbus, I've never, I mean, although we have been actively looking for Syrian refugees to help and support as a Syrian community, but I mean, like the numbers that Stephanie gave are actually 10,000 in the coming 5 years. And that's just to put this in perspective, it's 10,000 out of 4 million people, 4 million refugees who are fleeing their country, and 10 million internally displaced. So 10,000 over 5 years, that's like 200 per year. If you divide this by 50 states, that's 200 divided by 50, or sorry, 2,000 divided by 50, that's like 40 per state. Yeah. So it's like one extended family coming to Ohio. I mean, those are the real numbers, actually.
Okay. And I think you have some numbers on Ohio.
We here in Columbus, we only had very few families resettled by all 3 resettlement organizations. Really, we had, 2, 3, maximum 4 families resettled. Also, a couple families were resettled in Cleveland, and probably around 60 Syrian refugees were resettled in Toledo. These are very small numbers. And just last fiscal year, only, I think, 1,682 Syrian refugees entered the United States.
So then let me ask you, and let me turn down the line there to Ms. Wright there in regards to who determines where refugees go. I mean, if you're in the process, who says, okay, I'm sending 50 here, I'm sending 100 here? How does that happen? Well, what determines that?
As far as like what city and state?
Correct.
It's the partnership of the resettlement support centers.
Okay. So is there
where they have resources to support those refugees.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this is good to know. I had one more question, I think, for Sumaya. You talked about. Do you have a common connection now, or you talked about the conditions that are going on right now? Can you explain that maybe a little bit as far as what people are dealing with right now? Because we see the pictures and we see the stories, but I don't know if you've had connection with anybody who's there or family who is there. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have cousins, I have aunts and uncles in Syria, in both Aleppo, Hama. I mean, like right now, as we speak, some areas in Syria are being bombarded by Russians, by ISIS, by the Assad regime, and yeah, that's enough, I think. But actually the coalition, like the American-led coalition on ISIS. And unfortunately, like ISIS do not have those, clear targets to target. I mean, at the end, like you're targeting civilians, and this is why bombardment per se cannot solve the problem. You can't eradicate ISIS by bombarding their areas. You have to work, I mean, I'm not calling for boots on the ground, that's not what I'm really referring to, but we have the Free Syrian Army right now, who are like composed of moderate oppositions, who are fighting both ISIS and Assad. And I think our responsibility is to support those opposition, moderate opposition, in order to help them win this war. Like maybe we can do a no-fly zone where people can go. It's like a safe haven for people to go and just at least no bombardment by aircrafts. So is this, I don't know if this is too much to ask for Syrian people. Like they're right now, after 5 years of going through this, they're just helpless. They're hopeless. It's like, yeah, I mean, the area where my uncle lives, like there's no electricity for weeks, sometimes months. They have no water. But this is the least actually they're suffering. That's no big deal for them. They're used to this kind of life. But protecting their kids and children from the shelling and bombardment, that is the big question.
Yes.
I would like to make a comment about because of their current history and because of the situation they find themselves in, I think the Syrian refugees are demonized by certain politicians and certain groups. Let's put this into perspective. Who are the Syrians? You know, when I came to Atlanta, Georgia in late 1987, and summer of 1987, and there was the Muslim community have one mosque there in downtown Atlanta near Georgia Tech, and the Syrians were not the majority. There were few Syrians in Atlanta, but guess what? The best heart surgeon in Emory University and Medical Center was a Syrian. He was the Dr. Hisham Hawasli, and he was the director of the mosque at the same time. The pediatrician, after I got married for my children, and one of the best pediatricians was a Syrian. The imam of the masjid was a Syrian, but he was a dentist. He was a doctor as well. Syrians are model minority. Asian Americans are not the model minority. Syrians are. They have more doctors, more surgeons, more successful people than any other community you can think of, including the white American community in the United States. So Syrians will contribute to this community in any community they go to. They are one of the most educated group of people you can think of. Their literacy is 95%. So those who are demonizing the Syrian refugees either don't know who the Syrians are or they just are disingenuous. Thank you.
Actually, just reminded me of that Syrians. How many of you are using iPhones right now? iPhones, Apple products? Okay, did you know that if it was not for Syrian immigrants, you would not have been able to use those? How many of you knew that? Steve Jobs actually was the son of a Syrian immigrant, but he was later adopted by American fathers. So this actually, the meetup of the Syrian genes with the American environment, that's what led to successes like Apple and, So just to comment, thank you. No problem.
Thank you so much. That actually is a perfect segue into what we were going to bring up because of sometimes I think we don't realize the positive impact that our refugee and immigrant populations have here in the city of Columbus now and also for the last 20 years. And so our office, in collaboration with so many other agencies, in which Guadalupe will mention that, just recently released a report on the positive impact of the refugee community here in Central Ohio. So if I could have my assistant director and also coordinator of the New Americans Initiative, Guadalupe Velasquez, speak on that.
A little over a year and a half ago, the 3 resettlement agencies here in Columbus, Ohio, approached me with a plan that they had to define and come up with specific data that would inform our community of the impact that refugees contribute to Central Ohio. And that was Nadia from Us Together, Angie Plummer from Chris, Community Refugee and Immigration Services, and Kay from World Relief Columbus. And we all know, if you work with refugees and immigrants, we all know, we see on a daily basis. You can see even on the streets of Morse Road, East or West Broad Street, East or West Main Street, the contribution and the infrastructure that is maintained because of refugees. But the data reflected even more greater numbers than we had anticipated. For instance, the refugee household spending of the Columbus metropolitan area is $35.9 million that comes into our economic city, right? So that's the economics, that's the economic contribution to our city. Total contribution of refugees in Franklin County, 1.6 million. Those are big numbers. We know that there's an estimate of 873 refugee-owned businesses in Central Ohio, and also local refugee communities support an estimate of 21,273 jobs. And so that's some of the data that we revealed in the report. With that, I would like to say that I am a welcomer, and I welcome you all to be a welcomer as part of us moving forward.
Thank you so much, Guadalupe. And in just a couple minutes, if you have questions of our panelists, you can begin forming a line over here, and we'll have you come up to the mic and ask your questions. So if you want to do that, you might want to start getting lined up now to ask your question. And if you could, please keep those questions brief. That would be helpful. And you know, with our office, you know, we also collaborate to be able to get things done and make things happen to really service our refugee and immigrant populations. And there are times when we need to make sure that we reach out to those who service and provide services, rather, to our refugee and immigrant populations. I don't think enough we lift them up to really show what they do. So I just want to name a few. That, you know, we have Somali Can, ETSS, the Somali Community Association, Asian American Services, and the Hispanic Coalition, Jewish Family Services, and the Cambodian Mutual Association, and many others. I mean, we could probably go on and on. I think that you can also look at our website, on our New Americans Initiative website, and see so many others. But I wish to really thank them also for the work that they are doing and receiving and working with our refugee and immigrant populations. So now we're at this point in time that I want to give you the opportunity to ask a question. So yeah, if you want to ask a question of our panelists, please come on up. Do I see somebody's about to stand up? Okay. Please come on up, and if you could just tell us who you are, and then ask your question, and I'm sure the panelists will be more than happy to answer that.
Yeah, I'm Jim Ebright from a local radio station, which probably none of you have ever heard, WCRS. We're a low-power FM station, which, thanks to the city, we're on the air. We are exploring going to a format of international radio. We already provide Somali language programming, Spanish language programming, programming aimed at the Indian community, both Asian and American. If anybody wants to assist, the hardest thing to do when you're doing this is locally produced content, so I'll be up here. But I guess my question to the panel is, how important is it to people that have come to cities like Columbus to get a connection to their local diaspora and to their old country? Is that really an important factor in successful integration?
Thank you. That can go to anyone.
So is the question whether if the immigrants have a connection to their old country, that will make them more successful?
In part, and with the other members of their local diaspora. I mean, people don't live alone, usually.
So is there, do we find that there's a difficulty for those coming in from other countries? Is it difficult for them to connect with their communities here? And is that helpful?
The community that was already here?
Correct.
Yes, it's very important. I remember I was one of the people who were here before the civil war in Somalia. I came in 1987, and then Civil War started in 1991. And when the United States of America started accepting Somali refugees in sometime in 1992, we were a big support system for them, because many of the Somali community that was already here were the ones that were helping them to find jobs, helping them connect them to different resources, teaching them some acculturation, giving them some acculturation information. We established a local Somali social services organization for them, just to help the refugees. So I think the refugees that don't have a community that speaks the same language, that has the same culture already in that locality, it will take for them longer to assimilate and to adjust, versus the community that, for example, if the Syrians come here now, and there's already strong Syrian community like Nadia, like Sumaya and others, it will take them time to figure out what services to connect. So it's a huge support system, and some communities find each other and stick together and live same localities, like the Somalis. Others, once they learn English, they scatter around and they don't even know each other anymore. So yeah, it's a big support system, and it's very important.
How important your community for you, right? Communities are important. They provide support system. And it is vital that we have strong communities that welcome refugees and immigrants. It is as vital that refugees and immigrants build connections with mainstream communities, that they make friends with people who are born here. And only through those personal connections, through those personal interactions, that we can understand and appreciate each other.
I'll get to you.
Actually, Columbus is one of the most welcoming cities I've ever lived in. I'm not saying this because I'm talking to you. I've lived in the East Coast, and I can see the difference. So I'm going to give you like a short story. I was contacted by a reporter, me and my friend. He wants to make a story about how Muslims feel nowadays, taking all those negativity in the media into account. So he wants to film us like for a whole day. What are the looks we get? How do we feel like as Muslims? And I told him, sorry, I can't help you with that story, because I've never seen any negativity here. All I see are smiles and respect and love. And we have actually experienced this in our Islamic center in Dublin, Noor Islamic Cultural Center. There was a call for a hate rally a few weeks ago. So people were scared, like some of the parents, they did not send their kids to school that day, that weekend school. And some of people did not come to the center at that day. And actually, it turned out that we had a huge turnout of supporters. There were like 20 to 50 people who were there just to show love and respect, and to be there in the face of the hate rally, which ended up to be one lady. Actually, I'm not sure if you have seen that story in the news. So even that lady actually turned her mind and decided to come in the center, and she was very welcomed by the community. So frankly, Columbus is one of the best cities for immigrants. I mean, it's very diverse. You have everything you need. If you need your own community, for Syrians, we have many of them now. There are Muslims, there are Jews, there are like all kinds of, it's a true American city. Like that's what makes America great, is that it's very diverse and very accepting. So keep it up that way. Thank you.
It's because of the same reason, Columbus being so welcoming. I moved from Rhode Island, Providence City to Columbus. In my personal experience, I found this city as a great city and like really a welcoming city. Like talking about the Bhutanese Nepali refugee community in Central Ohio, I think we are breaking the record of having 15,000 and plus. When you see the original resettle is, I think, around 3,500 for 5 years. So that already speaks that why Columbus is so much great, because there are like 12,000 people. I'm just talking about Bhutanese Nepali. They're moving from all around. There are people who have migrated from Alaska. There are people who are moving from Texas, Colorado, like to the West Coast, to the East Coast. I came from a tiny city, Providence. So this speaks why Columbus is felt to be a welcoming city, because everybody, like, I have a very good connection with friends around outside Ohio, and many of them are still thinking to move to Ohio. And I'm asking, why are you moving here? And they're asking, why did you move? That is why we are moving. I welcome them. Well, come here, because I have felt Columbus is going to be my home. And definitely, yes. As she was saying, I'm going to get myself naturalized in January, which is very close. I'm just counting hours, minutes, seconds. Never in life I happen to be a citizen of any country. So this is my first venture in life I'm going to get. I have my educational degree, I don't care, but I am looking for a country where I belong to. So, and the city where I am going to make my life, where my son is going to school. So definitely to have a local community, and like the relationship between the local community and the refugee immigrant is so strong. In 2009, our friends who were resettled in Ohio, Columbus started running a small, getting up together to form a small community organization. And in 2012, we got registered to IRS, and we are now a nonprofit, a Northland area. We are called Bhutanese Nepali Community of Columbus, BNCC. And we see the need of that organization is growing, because we see lots of people walking in. Once they know the office is being set up, there are so many people coming. Not only Bhutanese Nepali, there are so many other people coming and say, hey, what are you doing here? How can I be helpful? See, this is how the community is welcoming. There are people from the local communities coming and saying, how can I help your community? What role will you give it to me? Well, how can I be helpful to the community? I want to help refugees. I want to help Bhutanese. I want to help Nepali. How can I be helpful? That itself says that how great this city is. And I feel fortunate to migrate here from that tiny city. I don't mean Providence is bad. It's a welcoming city, but still, I like this city a great. And I'm very lucky to say that I am from Columbus.
Right. Again, we're happy to have you here. Definitely a testament. I think he should be a part of Experience Columbus or something, as far as one of our welcoming ambassadors here to the city of Columbus. Thank you so much. One question to Stephanie. We talked about the refugees coming in. And some people might ask, is there ever an end? Is there an end point? Is there a point where we reach maximum capacity? Has that been a conversation? Because sometimes people have come to say, when will this ever end?
I mean, that analysis is done at the presidential level, not mine. My role is benefits. I mean, we do immigration benefits as part of USCIS.
Okay. Well, Nadia.
Right now, we have close to 60 million displaced individuals around the world. And we have only about 16 million of those who are registered with UNHCR. And only 1% is being resettled worldwide. When will that end? When we will be able to address that? It's a long-term proposition. But there are a lot of people around the world who are suffering and who don't have any solution to their issues, don't have any solution to the problem. What we can do best is to welcome people who are lucky, who are few of the lucky ones who are able to come here and find a new home here in Columbus.
Thank you so much, Nadia. So, and I know Juma was talking about, being welcoming and being received, and how can you help? So that is a question on many people's minds. How can you help refugees? Help them integrate more into the community? What are their needs? And so I do have a person here that would like to talk just quickly on a program that they are doing to provide help to some of those refugees. So if Ms. Heather Tavares, is it to Savares? Savares. Okay, if you could come on up and please give just a quick summary about what you're trying to do and assist the refugees.
Thank you very much. Thank you all so much. Thank you for the time. I'm going to be very, very quick. My name is Heather Savares, and I'm actually helping to coordinate the Carry the Future drive here in Columbus. And so, when you were speaking about the Syrian refugees and what they're fleeing, I'll tell you a story about this organization. It was actually created about 11 weeks ago by a mom in California who had watched too much news about the refugees kind of going through Europe, and she said, I have to do something. she has a 2-year-old boy, and she realized, she thought, you know, when my baby was little, and even now, I carry him in something like this. And she thought, maybe, just maybe, I can collect these carriers and I can help take them to Greece. And so she did. Sorry, and it was, I've actually practiced this in order not to cry, but I find it to be very emotional as a mom of 2 little girls. And the idea was that this woman now has collected, has activated 4,000 moms and dads around the world to start collecting these, gently used and also new ones. And so what we said, a friend and I said, let's do it in Columbus. Let's see what we can do. We've set up 5 collection points around Columbus to collect these. The nearest one I think to here is probably the Greek Orthodox Church. So if you have something like this, please drop it off. Let me know. I'll stick around after. But more importantly, I think we have worked together to do an event on December 19th, Saturday, December 19th at 10 a.m. And what we're asking people to do is to come to Goodale Park with us, to bring your families, to bring whomever, and to walk together as kind of an awareness event to raise awareness about Carry the Future. But I also think maybe more importantly, to raise awareness about what the city of Columbus does for refugees and kind of the diversity of this community. So that's Saturday, December 19th at 10 a.m. at Goodale Park. If you come, we hope to walk together around the park about 1 mile, and we're asking people to bring carriers, to bring donations, whatever it is, to bring yourselves, really. I think that's most important. So with that, I think you all have some pamphlets. I'll be here to answer any questions, and thank you so much for the time and for all the work that you all do. Thank you.
So you ask, you know, what can you do? That's a step. And so if there's not any questions that are going to, is anybody going to ask any additional questions? Oh, okay, you have a question. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Rachel Zupan. I work with Nadia at Us Together. I'm our Women's Empowerment Program Coordinator, and also working with Nadia and other people on our team to develop a program for survivors of torture. And I think that this event today was fantastic, and I wanted to ask Nadia if she wanted to share any information about an upcoming event that Us Together will be hosting, and also to say to Sumaya, we should talk later if you want to know about Syrians in Columbus, because I have people for you. But I wanted to ask Nadia to share any information and mention that Sophie has flyers. Okay, that's all I got.
Well, actually, refugee resettlement organizations have been involved in a series of events recently, trying to provide as much information to community about refugees as possible so that we can break the barriers. And one of the upcoming events is going to happen on Wednesday, tomorrow, from 6 to 8 at Clintonville Global Gallery. Come and meet refugees face to face. We will have refugees from various backgrounds talking about their journey, telling their stories. I think it's the most important thing is to actually have personal contact. That's how we can dispel all the myths. So come over and join the conversation.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the panel for your insight, but also your stories and information and education. But please, though, take the time to come up and have a conversation, but also in the future, make sure that you have a conversation with someone that you don't know or someone from another country. Because as you hear, that's what makes the difference. It truly does. That's what makes the difference in understanding, because, you know, all too often we're afraid of what we don't know. And I think that if we just reach out and have these conversations, you know, that is why, and I hear over and over again, that the city of Columbus is a welcoming city and that we are very welcoming. All you see is smiles. And that's because I think we take the time, which time is critical here, to be able to take the time, not listen to the rhetoric, but find out for yourselves the truth and about people. Because I think what we find out is that we are so much more alike in trying to do what we do than what we are different It's just that we're from different sides of the world. So, and last but not least, Abdi's going to be taking pictures. And as you know, these were passed out. So we want to be able to use these pictures to show that we are unified together of being a welcoming city and that you are welcoming others here. So please do that here after we close. So again, he's modeling it for you. So again, thank you so much for coming. And I look forward to next year because we plan on doing some more of these conversations on not only this topic but others. Thanks so much and have a great day.